Everyone, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast this week. This is your host, John O'Sullivan. So excited to have you here. So excited for our guest, Colleen Munson. Now, before we jump in with Colleen, just want to give you all a reminder that registration for the 2024 Way of Champions conference is open. We are live again, Denver, Colorado, beautiful Colorado Academy. We've secured hotel blocks, which are going to fill up fast. We have secured that amazing venue again, and it's just going to be a great, great conference. Now, we do have a live stream option as well. So if you can't be there in person, we still hope that you'll join us via live stream because it's going to be amazing. And regardless if you do the live stream or you come in person, you're going to get the recordings to all the events and all the sessions and everything that we've done there as well. So you can just go to changingthegameproject.com, the main menu, you just see Way of Champions Conference, click there, sign up with our partners, Championship Productions. It takes you to their page to sign up this year. And we're so excited. This is going to be an amazing event. Now, our guest today, Colleen Munson. She just finished her 19th season at the helm of Western Michigan women's volleyball in 2023. In 2023, they had one of the best seasons in program history. They won the MAC regular season and tournament title. They went 31-3, which was their first 30-win season since 1983. Perfect in the conference. They punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament and beat number 7 seed Auburn in straight sets in the first round. So a super exciting season. Colleen has been there forever, has won over 200 games, has had 10 20 plus win seasons, multiple MAC West championships and regular season titles and tournament titles, and has had many players go on and become players of the year, All-Americans, things like that. And so she was suggested to us by a former guest and said, here's a coach you have to talk to. And so Jerry and I are so thrilled about this conversation today to talk about longevity in coaching. How do you not get burned out? How do you keep doing the great work year after year for 20 plus years now? We talked about working in the era of the transfer portal and NIL and how that changes things up. And then things like, what are the non-negotiables of your program? How do you recruit people into it and things like that? So I'm super excited, and I hope you are too, that Colleen will be joining us here. Okay. So get ready, get set. It's Colleen Munson, Western Michigan volleyball. Here we go, everyone. Colleen, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast. Jerry and I are super thrilled to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Big fan.
Yeah, well, we're big fans, and when Tree said, we asked Tree, tell us a coach that we need to have on as a guest. Your name popped right up, and so the work you've done. I mean, I guess first of all, congrats on what an amazing season you just came off, 30 wins and beating Auburn in the NCAA tournament. Western Michigan volleyball's in a good place right now, isn't it?
Yeah, so we can, and I appreciate the shout out from Tree, and we can give her much of the credit for helping shape our culture to what it is today. And we know that our experience this past fall within the NCAA tournament and our historic run for our school doesn't come without a solid culture. And we need to talk about that, because I think people have been where we were as a program, and if we're all in the coaching world, you're going to be a part of a positive culture or a negative culture. And either way, it's going to dictate the outcome for that year, whether you realize it or not.
I like the point you just made there. I want to jump in, Colleen. Yeah, so great to meet you, and I'm honored. The thing is, you're going to have a culture no matter what happens, and that's what coaches need to realize. You will have a culture. What this is about is, what kind of culture do you really want, and what's needed. So I'm glad you made that point.
Yeah, that's so true. And we kid ourselves. I'm going on 25 years of this, and listening to your podcast, on the way to recruiting, and I've got a little notebook and I jot some ideas down. I probably should admit that I'm actually driving and writing things down, but I go back and listen to it, and if we're not a student of the game, so to speak, and I use that term game very generally, if we're not a student of the business of coaching, of watching NCAA tournaments and, you know, football games and listening to your podcasts and listening and watching soccer practices and whatnot, we've lost sight of the learning opportunities that are in front of us. And we continue to expect and demand excellence from our student athletes. And we raise the bar with expectations, but if we don't have that professional development, the really intentional to professional development, then we've lost sight of what we can be ourselves, and we've set our ceiling for ourselves. So very, very important. And Tree and I have met, and she was on our staff for a while, and one of her primary roles is to focus on our culture. And if you're going to focus on your culture and be intentional, we believe that you also need to receive feedback and do something about that feedback. Feedback is only as good as what you do with it. And it hurts sometimes, and you take it personally sometimes, because we all set out to coach, to better young women or young men and ourselves. Sometimes we get sidetracked and blindsided a little bit, and we need to course correct ourselves, and first and foremost.
Well, I think, you know, a couple questions come to mind. And the first one is 25 years of doing this and in your 20th year at Western Michigan, you know, where was your focus 25 years ago? I know mine wasn't on culture and whatever. It was on where's the magic practice, right? I'm just missing the drills. If I just had the drills, I'd be fine. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I've heard you say that, you know, and the transparency that you guys have on this program with your guests and yourselves is very inspirational, because you asked me where I was 25 years ago. I was a collegiate athlete. I was fortunate enough to be a collegiate athlete for a wonderful coach. And Kathy George was my mentor and coach from when I played in travel ball at 16 years old to college, to she actually hired me to coach, excuse me, I'm dating myself, restricted earnings coach. Remember those terms? Restricted earnings coach, meaning you could, you know, make $10,000 ish, live on a couch, pride yourself on living on the couch and spending 15-hour days. I say that nowadays, and I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but it's true. That's the generation that I was raised in and grew up in, and prided ourselves on the fact that we put more time and energy into our craft. But did we really need to do that? You know, nowadays, flip the script. We don't have office phones. We're on our cell phones. We don't need to be in the office. We're always available to communicate with recruits or coaches or whomever, our administration. So the work-life balance is important. So 25 years ago, I was working hard because that's what I saw my coaches do themselves. You know, they were in the office. I was going to be in the office. We were going to land that next recruit. I was going to take my next coaching position. And then that was going to be my ladder, so to speak. You know, I was going to be there for 3 to 5 years. I was going to find that perfect practice plan. I was going to find that prize recruit, develop them, and, you know, write the script. I don't want those things anymore. I thought I wanted that in goal setting, you know, setting the vision of, I'm going to be in the Power 5. It wasn't a Power 5 back then. I'm going to, you know, earn not only conference championships, but, you know, be on the doorsteps of national championships. That is not as important to me anymore. What I've found is developing young women and teaching the life skills through the medium of athletics and through the medium of volleyball is my passion. I haven't always hit the mark. I'll be the first to admit, I've made plenty of mistakes. And I hope that, you know, I share with the young women that I made the mistakes with, that I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. When I know better, hopefully I corrected some of those mistakes. But for 25 years, the end goal, the product, was winning. What I lost sight of probably about 5 to 10 years pre-COVID was the process is the most important piece to the outcome. If the process is in place, the outcome will be there. And it took, admittedly, mistakes. Shall we say, the culture carriers weren't always a part of our program like I thought they were. Blindsided as coaches. How much do we get involved in their personal lives? How much do we get involved in the locker room? Is it a strong locker room? Do you have my back? That is something probably I should have focused more on, but not knowingly was burned a few times by immature 18 to 22-year-old women. You know, I'm asked, you love what you do. What's the hindrance of what you do? If you could do something different, what would it be? I'm like, well, I would prefer not to have my livelihood in the hands of 18 to 22-year-old women, right? But that's what I've chosen to do
Mhm.
because there's an immaturity there. And when we recruit young women, we have to recruit the intangibles in addition to the physical skills. And sometimes we miss the mark, or the family, the club coaches, the high school coaches, the young women lead us to believe there are certain characteristics in their hearts and their, they embody, but they don't always, that doesn't always come out. Or you've got a bit of a challenge in the locker room that is easier to gravitate towards than doing things the right way.
Mhm.
So I take full responsibility for the lack of having a solid culture, and 100% of the credit goes to our young women who have built the positive cultures that I've been a part of stewarding.
Mhm. Um, I know there's so many places we could go with that, and maybe Jerry,
Absolutely.
I'll let you jump in. Just about Jerry and I were talking before you jumped on, Colleen, about this idea of purpose versus performance driven identity. And so, Jerry, why don't you jump in with that? But I definitely want to come back to recruiting and finding the right people and having your livelihood depend on 18 to 22-year-olds because that's really important. But Jerry,
Right.
you want to kind of jump in there?
Well, yeah, sort of tangentially, John and Colleen, uh, I look around at a lot of the coaches that I've been fortunate to work with, and they're a lot like you. And so it's a blessing for me. I get to learn from them as well. One thing I do notice is that when you're successful, you when you're successful, like you feel a sense of value,
Mhm.
and people are giving you that feedback, whether it's your AD, whether it's your team, parents, or whoever, or colleagues. And I think there's a lot of coaches out there that are not, in the traditional sense, successful on the scoreboard, and
Mhm.
they're young and they're trying to make their way. And I was just curious if you might be able to help them. The question that I would ask to help them is like, what gave you a sense of value uh, on your journey to being in the position you're in right now? Because clearly, you're in an enviable position. You've got a great school, a supportive athletic director,
Right.
wonderful kids, wonderful environment. I'm familiar with that part of Michigan. It's wonderful.
Right.
And bar some winter weather, but we can deal with that, right? Volleyball is an indoor game,
Right. Right.
unlike lacrosse.
Mhm.
Uh, but anyway, so what do you say to coaches out there uh, to give them what do they need to look for? What gave you a sense of value on this journey to being where you are today?
Well, it's such a good question, and I wish we all had that opportunity to be mentored by someone that had lived it out and was as transparent as I want to be with these young coaches. We do have a new athletic director as of a couple of years ago, and he's wonderful. Dan Bartholomew is just tremendous and has raised the bar in so many different aspects of our department. He's asked me to mentor some of our younger coaches, our female coaches, and I've taken that on, and we have coffee and we talk. And the things that they ask me, I flip the script and I say, okay, you asked me the mistakes I've made. I've made plenty of mistakes, and we'll go through some of the situations and scenarios and such. And I'll say the biggest mistake that I've made was trying to control things that I had no business trying to control, and being in the moment. Meaning, when coaches are successful, we have a bent towards what's next. What's my next competition? What's my next game? What's my next obstacle, so to speak? What's my next crisis? And we have a hard time living in the moment and embracing the moment. And I really stepped back over the last fall because we all know any season is not one and done. It's not the months that leading up to it. It's years leading up to that season. And the work that goes in the culture or in the development of these young women or in our staff or and whatnot, developing the community, the camp culture, everything. It's not just a championship season. It's 4 or 5 years leading up to the championship season. And I think the biggest mistake that I made was thinking, we're going to do this every year. We're going to have the same success every year. So we're going to change a little bit of who we recruit, meaning back in 2008, we won a championship. We got to the Sweet 16. We played Penn State in the Sweet 16, arguably the best collegiate volleyball team ever. They didn't lose a match for like 4 years. Incredible. So our staff got together, and this is, again, a mistake. We got together and we're like, how do we get to the next level? How do we get to past the Sweet 16? So we changed our recruiting philosophy a bit. And I don't want to bore you with details, but in any sport, you've got athletes and you've got position players that are skill driven, and they have an IQ in their sport. And we drifted away from we drifted away in 2009 and 10 and beyond for a few years, away from what got us there in 2008 towards what we wanted to attain beyond that. But we lost sight of how do you get there is winning a conference championship first, dominating your conference, and then getting to the first round, second round, third round. And let's admit, although it's an aspiration and we want to strive for those things in the NCAA tournament, the expectation is to win the Mid-America Conference, which is a mid-major level, and it's not Power 5. So we went after some athletes, but we didn't get the athletes with the volleyball IQ or the volleyball skill set that we were previously getting at a lower athleticism. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
totally.
we lost sight of our identity.
Yeah.
And when we lose sight of our identity, we become someone we don't recognize. So we had to shore that up a bit. But again, let me go back to this past fall season was a championship season in the making for 3 years. What people forget is the previous year we didn't make the conference tournament. So they take 6, we didn't make 6. So we sat this group down and we said, arguably you guys are the most talented team we've had in a very, very long time by position group. We found various ways to lose. We lost 5 matches in 5 sets in different ways and blah, blah, blah. So I challenged them. And in this day and age of the transfer portal, very dangerous thinking as a coach or as an athlete, who's going to come in and quote, save us? Who's going to come in and be an impact player for us to change what I can change myself as an athlete? So we're waiting for a savior that may or may not exist. You might or may not get to course correct what can be changed within your program on a daily basis. So what I mean by that, I had to step back and go, ask myself, do we have what it takes to be successful? Yes, on paper we do, but we have to develop them in a way that they need to recognize that we have what we have to be successful individually before we can collectively come up with a system. So quick story, we didn't get to the conference tournament in 2022, the fall of 2022. We knew we weren't in, and in Mount Pleasant, we went to a Panda Express in Mount Pleasant, and I had 3 captains, and we were still playing, mind you, but we knew we were out because we just lost the 5th set in 5, okay? They came up to me in tears, and they asked me, who's coming in next year? I couldn't make this up. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, who's coming in next year? What's going to change? And I looked at them and they were emotional and I got emotional. And I said, y'all, we need to change our focus. It's not who's coming in. It's what do you have? Look around you right now, you 3, and then look in that restaurant. We have what it takes. And we didn't bring anyone in and we didn't graduate anybody. And that's the unique part of that year. Okay. So they acknowledged, they kind of shook their heads, but you know how that is in their minds. They're like, she's crazy. There's no way. So we go into a second semester, and that's our non-championship segment. It's our 8-hour weeks, our 20-hour weeks. Okay. And we develop our young women and we hold them to a higher expectation. And we leaned on what we had already created in the fall. But for redundancy's sake, we went over it again and again and again. Every day we went over this. And I want to share with you if you're okay with it.
Yeah.
So we recreated our team mission. And our team mission became win championships, grow through adversity, and defend the family. And they defined all that. And it took weeks to come up with that. They had all these grandiose paragraphs and thoughts and hypotheticals and quotes. And I said, it's too long. It's too long. It's got to be something you can say out loud every day. And you're living this out. Okay. Once you have your mission, which is what you exist for, now we're going to create our vision. And we stole this vision from our team and during COVID, and it's been the same for 5 years. And that vision was they wanted to play volleyball, and that's all they cared about. And they make it, take it, love it, defend it, no matter what it is. Okay, they want to make the best of this. Take it for what it is. We had to wear masks. We could only practice 10 at a time. We could all those crazy things we lived out. Okay, they were going to love it and defend it and understand that they might get volleyball taken away from them, but that is their vision. Okay. Then we had our core values, and our core values are really catchy. They're mine. They're not anyone else's. So they always travel with me, but we kept these the same. Okay. And it was live, love, and learn and lead together. So definition, we live courageously. We are stepping out on campus, on the court, in our communities, in our classrooms, and we're courageously living out life. Okay. And this is obviously transcends the court and the volleyball itself. Love and inspire. If you're not able to love your teammates and inspire them on a daily basis, what makes you think you're going to do it for 2 weeks in November, right? At the conference tournament time, okay? Learn to be curious. We're all students of the game, and we want to be curious about what's this angle I'm trying to hit, and how do I defend this? Or, even if it's something about learning about your teammate off the court and their backgrounds and their perspectives that are very unique, we want to embrace all of it. So learn and be curious is something we talk about. Communication is leadership. So that lead in there is important. We know that leaders can come in all forms, shapes, and sizes, but the best thing they have going for them is they're a communicator. And it could be body language, it could be off the court communication, it could be on the court communication, but they're always communicating. You know where they stand. And then the last one is be transparent. And this is what Tree helped me understand for years when she was on our staff. We create togetherness when I can see you and you can see me. And you asked me that earlier, John. 25 years ago, I would have never admitted I was making mistakes. I would have never admitted that I had shortcomings or I had blind spots, because that's not how I was raised. That's not how my coaches coached. That's not how parents parented back then. We now are a generation that are learning to evolve and to learn and grow with these student athletes. And if we don't adapt, we're going to get left, meaning they're going to hire someone that has a better relationship with their student athletes, that can relate, that can adapt. So COVID taught me we needed to grow through all this. And it gave me my sense of why. If I'm really going to lean on the values, the mission, and the vision of our program, I better buy into it in the worst of all times. I mean, that was a really, really tough time for collegiate athletics. So if we're going to move forward from this, we're going to grow through this. So this year's senior class, because they're taking COVID year, was that year's freshman class during COVID. So they had to live through the dorms. They couldn't leave the dorms. They had to wear masks when they played, all that whole 9 yards, right? So let me go back to the story. So we were in the Panda Express or the Panda parking lot in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. They asked me this question. We lead them into this every single day. We ask each other our goals. We set some things up in practice where they meet with accountability partners on a weekly basis. And then they decided to keep those accountability partners for 2 weeks. And what that is, if you, John and Jerry, if you're accountability partners, we build in time during practice to meet up with them after a drill, after a drink break. You guys talk. What are you working on today? I'm going to hold you accountable what you're working on today. That's very important for the transparency of what I'm working through. And it's important for the feedback loop and making sure that you receive feedback and can give feedback. And without those things, we do not have a championship season last year, because they didn't understand being accountable is a trendy term, but now I had to teach them how to be accountable. Okay. So we talked about this every day, sometimes to monotony and sometimes to glass over eyes. I said, I would rather go over this more often than less often, because it needs to hit home to us. When they started embracing these concepts, holding each other accountable, then we were able to change some behavior in the gym. And this is where I go back to years ago. You had a soccer coach on your show, and he explained not the buzzword of behavioral change or what that term is, but he explained to me how to do it. What we do in our gym is we change some behaviors. It's not coach's behavior to change, meaning I'm going to set up a drill. And if I set up a drill and I explain everything that goes into that drill, they're going to realize what we're working through. But if we set up a drill and let them fail in the drill, and then bring them together and ask them to pick out 2 things they're working through, process-driven goals versus outcome, it's going to be more relatable to them. And then they're going to realize this is how we want to change this. And we set up some specific guardrails about how to do this. And I took some things and twisted them around a little bit in the podcast I heard years ago, and we made it our own. And so we're changing behavior, which needed to happen after that conversation up in Mount Pleasant. Okay. So you link this up at the 8-hour weeks. They're starting to see some changes, putting it to 20-hour weeks. And then we have our season in our spring non-championship segment. We're able to play 4 matches. Within those 4 matches, we weren't as successful as we wanted to be, but we gave us a foundation to continue to grow.
Mhm.
And then the very special part of last year was we went to Europe. We raised the money to go to Europe. We trained for 10 days. We traveled for 12 days. And we took our team to a completely new level, built on the foundation of all this behavioral change and communication and cultural growth. We went over to Europe and we played 3 teams in Turkey, 3 teams in Italy. And the guide said, you guys are really good. I set up matches based upon last year's results and last year's RPI. And I said, yeah, we're not the same team. He goes, no, you're not. They had to call in ringers. They had to call in people saying, hey, Western Michigan's coming. They're really good. They want to be challenged. You need to bring in someone from this team and this team and this team, because they don't want to win everything. But we won everything. And we learned that we could do things our way differently within the same group of young women. We didn't bring anyone in. We didn't lose anybody. And their minds changed. Their mindset became growth mindset versus fixed mindset. They were very process driven versus outcome driven, which outcome is we talk about how many kills did you get? How many goals did you score? How many baskets did you score? That's outcome driven. But yet we contradict ourselves as coaches when we say, but I'm process oriented. If you're process oriented, you train ugly, you don't care about the mistakes. You can't, as a coach, contradict yourself. So I'm learning all these things. I'm teaching myself all these things. I'm growing through all these things with our staff. I'm teaching it to our team, teaching it to our leaders. And lo and behold, we're grasping onto it and we're successful. And we never once talked about winning.
Yeah.
We talked about what it means to be a team player with a group of young women that you care about and you love the game and you love the sport, about what's important. And that became our mission and our vision and our values. And when we stuck to those, we were a better version of ourselves. Now,
Well,
was it perfect? No. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is like a master class here on so many levels. So thank you, Colleen. And I just, this concept that's ringing in my head is sort of, to any coach, how would you coach your team differently if you knew these were your players? Right? Like, it's so easy in college to be like, well, we'll just recruit a new striker or a new setter or a new, whatever. Right. And it's like, but man, no, how would we coach them different? How would we pour into them differently if these are the players we're relying on this year? And I think, number one, right, your captains in that moment, very typical of like, okay, how are you going to fix our problem? Right. Versus, no, you're going to fix your problem. Right. And number two, right, as a coach, it's very easy to default to, let's go to the transfer portal. Let's just find a kid, versus like, oh man. And what I really love, what I really pulled out about that is, a lot of our teams, we talk about accountability groups and accountability in the off season, make sure people are doing the fitness packet, make sure they come in shape, all that. But I love this idea of, just a weekly touch point, or even, like you said, every practice. All right, this water breaks 1 minute longer, right? Touch base with your accountability partner. What are you working on today? What's your intention? How's it going? And just these little moments to sort of refocus. Because we all know, like, no one's great every day in practice, but on your bad days, can you be a little bit better? And that's what great teams do. And so I just love everything you just shared there. I mean, I hope people are like writing this stuff down, because everyone is capable of doing what you just shared. It's just hard work.
It's hard work, and it's 100%. It's not easy. And there's a couple other caveats to it that I haven't gotten into. I can absolutely share it with you, but it's meeting them where they are, admitting you're there with them, because they only know what you've shared. And I can't tell you how many times our staff meetings, when we plan practices for the next day, I said, we've got to meet them where they are, not to where you think they are, but where they truly are. They don't know what they don't know. Meaning, we talk about the future with recruits coming in. You can't project that someone's going to be a starter in a collegiate game they've never played, and they play high school and high level travel ball, but they've never played with 18 to 22-year-old women who have failed over and over and over, and have figured out the trajectories, the speed, the angles, the travel, the classes, the homesickness, balancing life. That's impressive when you see
Mhm.
a fifth year senior, a fourth year senior, a third year starter that's failed that no one ever talks about. I always say this. I wish someone at convention would have a conversation that focuses on the failures to get them to see the success.
Mhm.
Meaning, we always hear from the championship coaches, but they're never as transparent as I believe they could be, because 99% of the people in that room failed, meaning
Mhm.
they didn't win the championship at the end of
Mhm.
the year, the last game of the year. Who can say they did that? Congratulations. But take us through how you figure that out. Take us
Mhm.
through that step, because that's where we learn. We learn from failure.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And I think I mean, this is the thing as the coach, when you are equally vulnerable and I screwed that one up, that one's on me, then your players are much more likely to say, "Yep, and I did this, and I'll work on that." And this is hard work. And I think one of my favorite books years ago, John Gordon wrote this book with Mike Smith. I think he was the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and he wrote this book called "You Win in the Locker Room First." And he in the book, right, he wrote about all the things he did well to make it to a couple conference title games in a row. And then what I loved about the book was then he said, and then I stopped doing the little things because I just assumed that those were just there. And he goes, and a year later, I lost my job.
Yep.
Right. And
Powerful stuff.
super powerful. Right.
Yep.
And so all these little
Yep.
things, we keep doing them, we keep layering on them, but we can't
Yep.
forget the humility. We can't forget the
Yep.
basics.
Correct.
um
Well, if
and
you don't
just go,
mind,
oh, we're past that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's where I gravitate towards. I gravitate towards not the conceptual, what you just shared or what I've been talking about or what you led with. Those are all amazing things to talk about.
Mhm.
But what I always go back to is how. Yes, we want to get there, but how do we do it? Yes, we need to get there, but how do we make that happen? Can I
Mhm.
just spend a little bit of time with you guys on what we have found helped us and what we had to fail and grow and fail and grow? And if this helps anybody else, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to share it. They could reach out to me, but there's a few things that helped us understand the behavioral changes. You can't just say you're going to change your behavior
Mhm.
and snap your fingers and go, you're going to be a better middle blocker. You're going to be an all conference outside hitter, because a lot of it comes with between the ears. The mental side of the game is really important.
Mhm.
And shout out to Carol Dweck and mindset. And if you haven't had her on, she's tremendous. Fixed mindset versus growth mindset is the foundation of our program. We read that every year coming in as freshmen.
Mhm.
But I also believe I met today with a rising senior who I said, I'd like to read this book over with you again, because I think it's really important after 3 years of not necessarily the inconsistency that we've seen and that I really want to pour into you. And because this is going to help me become a better coach.
Mhm.
She has completely changed the way she's looking at things. And I always start a semester with the slate is clean. What you went through in the fall and the starters in the fall have to re-earn opportunities. And that's important because if we start to label kids, that becomes the self-manifestation of who they think they are as well. So
Mhm.
clean slate, everyone starts afresh every semester that we start, whether championship segment or non-championship segment. And the ones that are consistently doing it typically get the opportunities to perform. Well, this young woman has changed tremendously, and I'm so proud of her because she put in the work. Okay. We also do something called reflective relaunch. And every month, I'm going to pull up one of these here while we're talking. Every month we connect on what we call a reflective relaunch, and they're looking back on the previous month for their growth.
Mhm.
Okay. First year we put this together, it was somewhat of a, I want to sleep more. I need to be more organized. I need to do this. I need to do that. And you're like, okay, that's not what we're talking about. This should be volleyball specific or sports specific. And the level of self-introspection and insight has been tremendous. So we use this on our end of the season meetings because they
Mhm.
know what they want to talk about. Instead, years ago, 25 years ago, I would have said, John, you got to be a better server, passer, attacker.
Oh, you've seen
Jeremy,
me play.
correct. Oh, yeah, right, right. But when they write it,
Yeah.
now it's meaningful. They put time into it. And it's very important when you have a thought, you write it down. When you write it down, you share it. When you share it, you're so much more apt to make the change because you've admitted it. When we don't share it with people or write it down or even think about these things, it just becomes distractions and it becomes habitual negativity in our minds. And nothing ever changes.
Or when you write it down 4 months in a row and nothing's changed, you're
Nothing's
like, well,
changing.
you wrote this down. What did you do to change this? Like, give me concrete actions. Give me
Correct.
something objective. Well, I didn't
Yes,
really do well. Okay. So you weren't really serious about change, right? So don't
correct.
come in asking about playing time because you identified what you needed to be better at and you haven't fixed it. So
Are you in our program today? Because that's exactly what we're talking about. But
mhm,
this is a mechanism, again, to change your behavior.
mhm,
Now, let me just explain this to you a little bit. Every month, we look back on the previous month. They give us their wins, their 3 wins, whatever those are. I'm not talking outcome wins. I'm talking about successful things that they've done. Their 3 losses specific to volleyball. Okay. Their 3 learns specific to their position in volleyball. How did I lead myself well in 3 different ways? What is my critical inch? In critical inches, what do I uniquely contribute to the team that no one else contributes? And these are
mhm,
all intangible things. Some of them are physical skills, whether it be
mhm,
platform and passing or arm swing, et cetera. Okay. What am I going to start doing in the next month? What am I
mhm,
going to stop doing in the next month? And what am I going to continue doing in the next month? 3
mhm,
things in each of those areas. So you put this together, you have to put some thought into it. And a lot of us don't want to think about what we're not good at. This
mhm,
forces you into it. It forces you to articulate it and to share it. The next step of the process is we get together in what we call small championship groups. Okay. So 3 to 4 people. And we talk about our team mission, our team vision, our team values. What are we focused on in our goals for the 8-hour weeks? What are we focused on for the 20-hour weeks? What are we focused on for the spring season, fall season, et cetera? Okay. How are we doing? What are you seeing in your team? And it's an open-ended question. And they start to share, well, today at practice, we were closer to such and such. Yesterday, we didn't do a great job with this. We're going to focus on this. I'm like, excellent. Those are great things to talk to your accountability partners about. But even more important is this. So then they share these things and they share in an open forum with 3 or 4 people. No one judges anybody. But now, positionally, setters know what passers are working on. Passers know what defenders are working on. Defensive players know what the offense is working on. So they have a better understanding when the accountability partners approach one another in practice. Now you know what they're working through and you hold them to it. So this only works if John tells Jerry you're working through something with blocking, and Jerry, you say, I don't see that. I think you're better than that. That's the verbiage we're using now.
mhm,
Instead of holding them to a standard that they don't understand, or we've heard this before. Well, I can't give feedback to the blockers because I'm a back row player. No, you can raise your IQ, hold each other accountable. Well, I don't want to say something that I'm not doing myself. No, then we're not going to win. We're not going to be successful in this process if you're going to continue to focus on that. Okay.
mhm,
So the process becomes very important and they're pouring into the process. So over the course of a year, I have 12 different sheets of paper and I can see the growth and I hand it to them and I say, look at how much you've grown this year. It's
mhm.
not a stat line. It's not a win or loss. It's the development of the intangibles that will originate with the mindset, but eventually become the outcome of the skill set that you need to be successful.
Mhm,
So it's a
mhm.
lot of words there, but that's the process and I have to be
Yeah.
intentional with this.
Yeah. Jerry, a lot of this sounds very familiar. So, and I see Jerry's furiously taking notes. So I'm going to
Right.
invite him in because I know he's got some thoughts
Please
here.
do. Why is it
Yeah.
familiar? Why is it familiar? Is it something that you've talked about before? Educate me.
Why is it familiar to me?
Mhm.
Oh, it's what I write about all the time. You know, Writ
Okay.
I've written a lot of books and
Loving it.
yeah, so what you're doing is you're really supporting a lot of the work that we're doing, which is really lovely without giving it a name. But
Yeah.
it's great to see somebody out there like you who are actually putting into operation these concepts, which are extremely valuable. So even though John and I talk about it in our conferences and on the air, you know, we love to have that kind of reinforcement. And
Yeah.
you're in the trenches,
Right.
and it's better than talking to someone who's just writing books, right? So,
Well,
and
that's
John and I have both been in the trenches too. You know,
right.
we do a lot of this. But I want to jump in here. I think you'll agree with me. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the most important thing you're talking about is the relationship game here.
You got it. Trust,
Yeah,
really good
right.
trust.
And
Correct.
so I pick up on that really clearly. And in the relationship game, you mentioned skill sets. To me, as a coach, you probably have developed one of the most important skill sets that I believe every coach out there that's listening needs to develop, and that is the skill set of listening.
Mhm.
How do you listen, or I should say, what does it mean? Let's start with what it means. What does it mean to you to be a good listener? And then maybe you could help the coaches out there pick up something real quickly that you could tell them how to be that good listener.
Okay, I think that's such a good thing. I think when at 25 years ago, I think I was younger, wanting to control more of the narrative, realizing that that's not always the way to go about things to get to the outcome that I'm desiring. Speaking less and listening more is important. And this generation has gotten a little bit of a bad rap on, they don't talk a whole lot. They're reading the room. They're reading the room and telling us what we want to hear sometimes. And that drives our generation a little nutty because we want to hear the truth. They're afraid to tell us the truth until a relationship is formed. But we have to read the room as well. So in order for us to be our very best and develop these relationships, we have to grow, show transparency, build that trusting relationship by admitting when we make mistakes, admitting we don't have all the answers, and asking their opinions and truly running with their opinions. And if you build those relationships and you build that trust, they're going to be honest with you. We did this last week. I asked them how their bodies were feeling. This is a non-championship segment, so we don't have weekday games. We only have one play date on the weekend. We gave them a day off and said, take the weekend, take a long Easter weekend, and we'll regroup on Monday. In the fall, we practiced twice a week because their bodies needed to rest. They had a new lift cycle, and their legs were heavy. Well, we play a jumping game. If their legs are heavy, that's not going to help us. We don't do things just to do things to say we did them. We do it with intentionality. And I think that is the biggest lesson that I'm learning, not only as a parent, but as a coach and as a mentor, as a leader of the program. I wear a lot of hats and I can't have all the answers. So I reach out to people that are better at the specific thing that I'm looking for insight in. So I solicit insight and I use it. Now I often thank them, hey, thank you for that feedback, but here's a perspective I'm coming from, because they don't always know that we're juggling a couple other obstacles in order to make a decision. So asking, collaborating, not only with our staff, but our student athletes, and reaching out to the support staff that's going to maybe hear the truth before I hear the truth. Our training staff, Michael is our athletic trainer. He hears everything before we do. And he knows that I'm going to listen to what he's saying and act upon it. You know, something simple like someone's not feeling good. Well, that goes around. Will everyone get sick? Just keep them at home. Years ago, I'd be like, well, it's a head cold, big deal, right? No, keep them at home. They're not going to be their best version of themselves. These young women are going to be concerned about spreading it. It was COVID years ago. Now it's just a head cold or whatever, but let's make sure everyone's at their best. And reps, the jumping reps, because a lot of things we do is low impact. We don't do it jumping because we want to save their legs. But I think to answer your question is collaboration, step back and listen before you speak and really process. And the less you say, and listen to me, I've been going on for 45 minutes, right? The less you say, the more is heard when you do speak. And I think that's an important piece for young coaches or someone that is.
But you also mentioned the concept of vulnerability. I would imagine that vulnerability fits really well with these young kids in terms of them believing that you're really listening to them.
Yep.
When you take responsibility and accountability.
Yep, absolutely. And I mentioned admitting our mistakes, admitting some of those things, but letting them know. And the older we get, the bigger the gap in age that we don't necessarily relate, or the opinion is that we don't relate to this generation. Well, you got to put yourself out there. And I'll give you a very specific example that is very hurtful to me. We had to put our dog down yesterday. And a lot of people are not dog people, but she was a part of our family, and she's a big mastiff and just beautiful, beautiful dog. And I admitted that on Monday. I said, hey, I got a really tough day, and I just want you all to know before practice, this is what's going on. So what they didn't realize is that I brought our puppy in. We brought a puppy in. I know that sounds silly. We put a dog down, we had a puppy. So we brought the puppy in. And I said, are you guys okay with this?
Mhm.
I don't want this to be a distraction for us. 20 years ago, never would have brought a dog into practice.
Mhm.
8-week-old English Mastiff puppy, mental health break for everybody. They all got to pet her. She followed them around in warm up. I have her in the office today. It's a vulnerability that I'm showing, that I'm sharing and explaining. And if someone said I don't like dogs or I'm afraid of dogs, I would have taken her home.
Mhm.
But they had a bit of a glimpse of my life. And I think that's really important that we share. So when something happens in their lives, I reach out to them. You know, someone's grandmother just passed. And I know that's really hard. Take some time, step away. Years ago, we would have probably, for lack of a better term, suck it up. You're good. You can do this. It's just, you know, put yourself in a position where you compartmentalize that. Why are we asking people to do that ourselves if we're not going to do that? If something
Well,
came up in our lives.
yeah, I mean, because us as a coach, right? You know, you have kids, you have a dog, you have a spouse, you have this life outside, and things happen, and so you have stresses that bring it in. Well, our
Right.
student athletes have classes and friendships and boyfriends and girlfriends
All of
and
it.
broken relationships
Yep.
and parents at home who get sick, get divorced, whatever. Yeah, so the
Absolutely.
idea that, oh, you know what, I need a little break, or hey, maybe my way is to go to work and work through this, but let me give that athlete the choice in the moment, especially one who has sort of earned our trust and
Correct.
made deposits in that bank and is
You
like,
got it.
they show up, so please take some time. And I think this is one of the difficult things, that incoming freshmen to a college program say, well, you let her take the day off. Well, yeah, she's been earning it for 4 years. Right. She didn't take the day off because what she did yesterday. She's taking the day off because what she's done for 4 years. You just got here. Right. So
Correct.
we're gonna, and yes, you know what? I have more of a relationship with them because I've known them a long time. And you know what? They've played 100 college volleyball games and you've played zero. So like, come on, but we have this instant gratification culture of, well, I've
Yes.
always been the star. I've always been the
Yep.
starter. I always got playing time. What do you mean I have to go earn it or whatever? And so
Well, and
it's
that's
it's
real.
interesting.
I think you're
Real.
talking about what's fair is not always what's equal.
Yeah.
And you've earned that opportunity. And when you're a junior or senior, we'll have the same conversations, but we've got some people on campus that we work with to help us early in their careers learn the perspectives that are coming in are very unique. And I think years ago, we weren't a part of that mentality. We thought everyone's the same and not realistically the same,
Mhm.
but this is where we're gonna be, and we've got to get on board or get out, right? And now
Right.
we're really open and vulnerable to some of those scenarios. And that's okay. It's not, you're not soft because you're vulnerable. You know, some of the buzzwords that our generation used in a not so fair manner.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So what's really interesting, everything we talk about is sort of these two paths in athletics. And I think athletes have to recognize this, and I think coaches do, and I think more athletic directors do as well. So you talked about Dan Bartholomew, your AD, and he had this quote about you. You just signed a new contract. And he said, "What I appreciate most about Colleen is their ability to connect as a leader and mentor to so many of our student athletes, staff, and coaches. She is selfless in serving our department. We're all indebted to her leadership." So you have this, your boss has this scorecard for you, right? That says she serves, she mentors other coaches, she connects with our student athletes, she serves as a leader within our department. Society has a scorecard for you that says how many games did you win? How many championships did you win? How many followers do you have on social media? How many, catchy quotes did you make to ESPN or whatever, right? And this is the problem, is that, or what society judges us by, or how we feel that to get the respect of society, we need to do this. Yet to get fulfillment, right? When you ask people what gives you fulfillment, it's friends, it's family, it's relationships, it's all this other stuff we talked about. And it's so important, I think, that people listening are aware and help make their student athletes aware that if you're out there chasing what society values, you'll never be fulfilled.
That's such a good point. And your professions, my profession, everyone's career paths are so much harder than the society realizes.
Yeah.
Our job got a lot harder post-COVID. Our job got a lot harder when we take all these thoughts about what collegiate athletics is supposed to be, and we then start talking about NIL and transfer portal and all this, and you can get distracted by it all, or you can just, where my current mindset is, I can control what I can control, and I'm not going to try to do anything more, because that gets me on a track that I'm telling our young women, don't go there. Don't look at the stat line. Don't look at the record. Be in the moment. Let's celebrate the success we had this evening or last night, but tomorrow's a new day. Respect the game, respect the changing of the game. I always try to put myself 2 weeks ahead of where we are. And it's a different game when you're being chased versus being doing the chasing. We were chasing for a while, then we were being chased. And I had to constantly remind them, we focus on the serve pass game, we're going to have more success. We focus on first ball contact, we're going to have more success. The process versus the outcome, because the world talks about the outcome. We're preaching the process. And if I deviate from that, it's inconsistent, and they pick up on the inconsistencies, because the world is gotcha. Our program and our healthy culture is embracing and celebrating when we're doing things well. When we're not, we walk alongside and we give feedback, and it's coming from a place of love, and it's coming from a place of what our values are. And that's not the world. The world wants to attack and tear down, but the different hats we wear, thinking about 15, 16, 17 different young women, 5 or 6 staff members, the department as a whole, our community, our fan base, my family. It's one umbrella for me, but it's individual entities for anyone on the outside world thinking, oh, she can be a mother, she can be a coach, she can be a leader, she can be a member of her family. But a lot of times the energy contradicts one another, and I have to protect myself from that. And I'm trying to teach these young women to be courageous and independent and stand up and be confident, and don't let the world tell you when they hear a confident woman that you're arrogant or sassy, or so we're constantly contradicting. But I never word it in that. I never say, well, the world thinks this, or your parents think this, or they're not in our practice. I mean, I can't control that. But a young version of myself may have tried, may have put too much effort into the trying and not enough effort into the empowering, not enough effort into the vulnerability, not enough effort into filling their tanks. That's actually a term we use, fill your tanks. After a drill, let's fill your tanks. Let's not cut you down, but let's look at what we did do well. Because we, as a human race, get beat down every day about what we're not. But let's look at what we really are and what we've accomplished. And that takes a concerted effort. And there's times as coaches, it's never good enough in our minds. We're on to the next. And Tria's really helped me realize, look what you've done. Look where you came from a few years ago when you had a dysfunctional, somewhat toxic of a culture. And I was the leader of that. I wouldn't blame any of the young women on that. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I still don't know certain things. But I have to trust the locker room, and I have to trust the behavior on the campus is going to be consistent and enhance our volleyball culture. Because you can't be everything to everybody.
So many coaches in your position, or maybe not in your position, because you do have some longevity at Western. You have benefit of the doubt versus someone who's new to a job. But so many coaches now are so worried about that toxic culture, or the one kid who can go and complain anonymously, or like I always worry about these universities that do immediate postseason senior exit interview, right? Well, what's the kid who didn't play as much as he or she thought what are they going to say? Right? They're not going to be like, oh, coach is amazing, right? But 10 years from now, they might be like, wow, coach changed my life. I just didn't realize it in the moment. And so we've become so reactive, I think, to, uh, student athlete opinion, or the opinion of their parents who aren't at practice, who don't watch them going through the motions, who just call and complain that my kid has always played, right? Well, you don't come to practice and watch him get beat out every single day by other people. That's why he doesn't play. That many ADs are very reactive to that as well. And then, we also have, so we have so much more support staff than 25 years ago.
Correct.
When 25 years ago, maybe you had an athletic trainer that you shared with 7 other teams, right? And now maybe you have one just for your team, or at least in your season. And now we have nutrition, and we have psychology, and we have mental skills, and we have all this. And, and some of those people don't know who to report to, and they report past the coach. And next thing you know, your program's in disarray because of 1 or 2 unhappy kids.
Yep.
And it's a really, so I agree. It is much harder to coach than it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
You have just described the reality of a lot of coaches. And years ago, I would have said, wow, we're only one bad recruit, family, young woman away from getting fired.
Yeah.
And all I can tell you now is how important it is and how valuable. And this championship wasn't won by our program alone, volleyball program, and our staff and our student athletes and parents and whatnot, and boosters. It is won by the athletic director. It is won by the support staff. It is won by my sport administrator. It's won by the athletic trainers, the counselors, the nutritionists, the academic counselors, the marketing staff, the SIDs. All of those are on board. And Jerry asked earlier, how do you build those relationships? Those relationships are so important, because if you don't listen and feel like, if they don't feel like they're being heard, there is apt to not necessarily turn on you, but not buy into the complete program that you want them to be all in with either. So it's a give and take. And, I've heard coaches, and I've been one of those coaches in the past, saying football gets this and basketball gets this. Now I've changed my tune. Years ago, when they win, we win. When football wins, when basketball wins, when hockey wins at our university, we all win. And the support that we have all felt since that. But that starts with me. And if I go downstairs and practice and I hear people saying, well, years ago, well, this has happened. I said, oh, isn't that great? What's in it for us? I'm so happy for those student athletes. Then let's go watch them, support them. And I'm the biggest advocate of watching other teams win championships and having leaders, because that's contagious. So what we're feeling now is it's contagious in our department, and it's contagious within our programs. It's contagious within our support staff. Everyone's being held to the same standards, whether you're a coach, a student athlete, or administrator, or support staff member. That is important. Now, yes, all this stuff you described can happen, but I'm choosing to look at it differently. Just turn the perspective a little bit, because I can't control that. You're right. The young women that typically have the loudest voice, the squeaky wheel, right, are the ones that don't play. But I'm hoping that the person on the bench has as valuable about perspective as the one that's been starting for 3 years. And I'm the first to tell that person, we wouldn't win without you. Your perspective is so unique. What you're giving is so important. The what you're not sharing, hearing from someone next to you that's disgruntled, won us a championship, because we know how detrimental and toxic the culture can be when the other happens. So I'm kind of flipping the switch and saying, I'm not going to focus on that. Is it out there? Is it naive? Maybe, but I'm choosing to focus on what is the positive and the good coming from some of the evolving and adapting cultures and adapting sport and adapting young women. And that's all I can control.
And again, it sounds like you have an athletic director who gets that, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
says, okay, you're going to be rated on these things. And you know what?
Right.
When you go 17-13 and lose 5 matches in 5 sets, it could have very easily been 22-8, and everyone would be going, wow, right?
Correct.
Now you go 30-3, and if you don't go 30-3 next year, it doesn't mean all of a sudden you're a bad coach.
Correct.
Or whatever. And so this is, we need more athletic directors and sports administrators.
Correct.
I think, again, tied into the program, part of the staff meeting, coming to practice, see what I see before you just talk about it, an athlete that's struggling or whatever. Come on out, see what I see. I think that's so important.
The buy-in, the true buy-in. When Dan arrived, he told us he had an open door policy. He listened to the athletes, he listened to the sports staff. I would say quite a few people have retired, have left, have pursued other opportunities. And we're seeing a lot of collegiate athletics but he has absolutely laid out his vision. So
Mm-hmm.
when someone above you is in line with what you're doing and what you've been doing, it's not easy to make that change. In fact, I welcome that. The people that are
Yeah.
working hard welcome that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
We should have some
Jerry,
administrators on. Do you have any administrators as guests?
I mean, we had Sandy Barber, who was the
Great.
AD at Penn State a couple of years
Yep.
ago, talking about some of this, and
Yep.
we've had Aaron Quinn, the AD at Middlebury, talking about some of this
I
stuff.
think some of those conversations get hijacked now by the buzzwords, NIL, transfer
Yeah.
portal. But we still, and especially our level mid majors in the group of 5, we still have aspirational goals to be successful, but they're recreating ways to raise revenue. I mean, Dan
Yeah.
is tremendous at that. And so I think you're talking about a lot of these things that it's a mind shift change for all of us,
Yeah.
for all of
Yeah.
us.
And it's hard. I mean, one of the, schools that I work at, they had a really good men's basketball season 2 years ago, and their best player, was offered, you know, 6 figures of NIL money to go to a bigger name school. What are you, as the coach, what are you going to say to that kid? Go,
Yeah, absolutely.
go.
Okay, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Right,
no, don't
right,
go. So that
right,
I mean, basketball and football are certainly living within a different
right,
reality than, let's call it, Olympic sports. But
right.
still, it's like, if I have the best interest of the athlete in mind, hey, if this
Right.
isn't serving your needs anymore, then you should turn pro, or you should go, or whatever.
Right.
It's
And
a different world.
we can't be afraid of what that's gonna do to our program if they do go, because someone else rises up and your attention is diverted. And, Alston money is being communicated, cost of attendance is still out there. We're still working hard at our level to attain the aspirational goals that we set out for ourselves.
Hmm.
But we also know our identity. We are not what is it calling a power 4 now, power 3,
Hmm.
we're not a power 5 institution. We can strive to recruit those athletes, but we also know our place, and we're going to do the very best we can to develop young women that want to play Division I volleyball, Division I athletics in our department, and be the best of it. So we're not always looking over our shoulder saying, what do they have? What do they have? We're trying to win our conference. We're trying to win the Mid-America Conference consistently. And if our sights are set on that, we don't get distracted by more than we should.
Yeah.
So we're always trying to save ourselves from ourselves sometimes.
I like that. I like that for sure. Jerry, any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I was just wondering, listening to everything you're saying, what coach out there stands out to you that you look up to, and why?
Mm.
Oh gosh, there's so many. I feel like Kathy George was my mentor. She was at Michigan State for years. She retired and she's with the Rise professional volleyball. That's a really interesting environment to get into. Professional volleyball and volleyball has just skyrocketed as far as interest in young women and such. I would recommend bringing a guest in from the professional PVF Professional Volleyball League, which is really important to continue our growth. Who do I look up to? So many coaches. I mean, I think what Travis has done at Western Kentucky is tremendous. He's consistently been there at a mid-major group of 5, and he has won a lot. And he's got a really neat story there down at Western Kentucky. I, of course, always admire Kirsten Booth over at Creighton, just for the being a powerful inspirational and influential woman in our profession and has a family and whatnot. She's just done a tremendous job and very big in the AVCA ranks. I would, if you haven't talked to her, I think that would be a really, really neat interview as well. I lean towards some of the women in our profession because I think when we're in Kalamazoo and I'm having a day, I can't lean on someone across the street or next door or someone that's down, working corporately. What we do is so unique in our profession that I have to go to different cities, different states, when I'm out recruiting or a convention, talking about it because we relate to one another. How are you doing as a female? How are you doing as a mother? How are you doing? How are you making this work? Being a CEO of your program? Because I think we deal with so many, we wear so many hats. And if we're not healthy and in our mindsets, it's going to be a rough year. And some of us really still allow the results to drive our value and our mindsets. And people get out because they don't want to be made to feel certain ways when we've chosen to be in this profession. So there's so many. I mean, Ryan Tice at Marquette University is just a role model to a lot of us. Susie Johnson in Milwaukee, people that have been in it for a while, you kind of generationally see some of those people that have been in it. And I just, hats off to them for fighting the fight every day and doing what, and I mean that very positively. Really working through the ups and downs of a profession, a wonderful profession, a profession we got into for the right reasons, and empowering these young women to be all they can be and using our sport as a medium for life is very powerful.
Love it.
One word. I
Passion,
want your response. One word. Mastery.
mastery, never ending. I don't think we ever master. I think we're always learning and growing. And if we think we've arrived and we think we've mastered something, you move on to something else, right? So
So that is mastery then.
yeah,
Mastery is just every day, one day at a time.
yeah. And
It's like
having the drive, the
Mhm.
energy, the passion to continue to find what it is that you're trying to master.
Great.
Well, I love that when he said one word, you didn't even have him finish the sentence. You just said passion, which I think was pretty clear for anyone who listened to the last hour, how passionate you are about this, your sport, your role as a leader and a mentor, and also your players and everything. So, Colleen, this was wonderful. You offered people could reach out. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
I think email, colleen.munson@wmich.edu would be a easy way. Obviously, we're all available online, checking our websites and whatnot. But I had mentors, wonderful mentors in my life, and I don't know how we became this age to be mentors for other people, because you feel like you're still 25 and young, and our first 5 years of coaching, learning and growing. But reach out, and I know I've had tremendous mentors. I'd love to be mentors for other people, and I grow and learn from listening to someone else as well, because their stories are either been there or I'm going to be there. Their journeys are we're walking hand in hand. We're walking this together, and we don't all have the answers. So I would love to reach out to people.
Love it. Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on the Way of Champions. It was a wonderful conversation. I know Jerry's got a lot of notes. I got a lot of notes. And anyone listening here today really got some very, very actionable things that they could start doing tonight at practice. So
Love it.
thank you.
Thank you for
so,
having
so
me. It was
much.
wonderful to meet you, and I think very highly of your work, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Well, we appreciate that. Thanks so much,
Have a
Colleen.
wonderful day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Well, Jerry, that was another really great conversation there.
High energy. High
Colleen,
energy is what I take away from that.
well, again, as she said at the end, passion. It's like, of course, passion.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you could just see that
Couldn't
right
even get a
there.
word out. It was passion.
It was just, so much. But I really like, some of her ideas, right? I like this idea of, how would you coach your people if you couldn't recruit anyone else, if you couldn't add, you're looking at them differently if I have to develop him or I have to develop her versus I have to replace them. And then, I really like this sort of more frequent accountability, just little accountability check-ins in a practice, 1 minute,
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah, that keeps it in the forefront of the minds of the athletes, because you could talk all you want about accountability, but if you don't visit accountability on a regular basis, and that could easily be done in practice every day, or at the end, summing up practice, it gets lost and it becomes just a word on the wall, and we got to go from the wall to the ball. And to make that happen, you have to have the conversation and be comfortable with it. And it seems to me like she's someone that's very comfortable with that and has had some success with it as well.
Yeah, amen. Love all that for sure. Yeah, I mean, so much good stuff there. I really also like this concept, right, of, knowing yourself as a coach, but then also knowing your program and focusing on who you are, right? It's very easy to move from we want to win the conference to we want to win a national championship and then forget your whole identity about what kind of team are we that we win the conference,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
thought that was really important as well, that as
Yeah.
she shared, like we started recruiting not the wrong people, but people, we forgot what got us to where we were,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and we lost our identity by trying
Well,
to be someone that we weren't.
they lost one identity
One
and gained
identity.
another one.
Right.
Yeah, like so many programs have what we call a performance identity, and right from the beginning, it's all about outcome results and production and what have you. And when you go to what we call a purpose identity,
Hmm.
then what happens is you stay really, really close to your why you're doing this, and then you don't get off track. So that when the temptation is there, like, oh my God, we've got to win this, we've got to win the conference tournament, and then we go to the NC2A, and all of a sudden everything becomes outcome oriented.
Hmm.
We always have to talk about reminders. We need to come back and remind each other about what our purpose is
Hmm.
and not to lose our purpose identity. And when
Hmm.
we hold on to that, we tend to actually day to day win the day and go forward one day at a time in an incremental way. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry we started to explore that, but I felt we could have explored it a little more deeply.
Yeah, we kind of jumped off it, at least
Yeah,
on herself and her identity. But I think, most of that came throughout
yeah,
the rest of the
yeah.
podcast for sure. She's very, very much in a place right now where she knows who she is and what
Hmm.
she values and
Hmm.
what she wants and needs her team to value, what are their non-negotiables.
Right, right.
And yeah, and so I think that was great. Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm very pleased, and I just want to say, we we continue to explore these human potential people out there, and they come in all sizes, shapes, and forms, and different sports. And but the bottom line is, it's all under the big umbrella of relationships and culture,
Hmm.
and creating that, and developing human beings, not human doings.
Hmm. Yep.
And I just see this consistency in the work that you and I do with the podcast. Of course, we do that with our conferences and the books we're writing and stuff like that. But uh, it's nice, it's reassuring, and there's a sense of steady flow of concepts that I believe are really important, valuable truths, make them
Hmm.
plural, that are not to be proselytized, but to be taught
Yeah.
and learned. And therefore, that's how we make changes, not
Yeah.
just in sport, but in the world.
Yeah. No, amen to that. Well, speaking of conferences, everyone, just reminder, registration is open and you can save $100 for the 2024 Way of Champions Conference, August 9, 10, 11 in Denver, Colorado. You can come join Jerry and I in person. You can join us via live stream. We're getting ready to announce some pretty awesome guest presenters as well coming up here soon. It's going to be just really, really exciting, I think, once we get that. But if you want to secure your hotel and your place at the event, take care of that now. Just you can go to
Yeah.
changingthegameproject.com and just click on Way of Champions Conference, and it'll take you right to the website of our partner, Championship Productions, and you can get signed up. And we also do 50% off if you have a group of 5 or more. And I think the most impactful that this event has been is when people have brought a bunch of coaches from their athletic department, and that's how they've really changed the culture, not just in a team but across the board. And how often it starts with one coach comes and then the next year they bring 5 and then the next year they bring 10 and they say this is our onboarding process now, or
Yeah.
they bring us to go visit them. So it's been pretty fun to watch that. So thank you all for listening. Thank you to Sprocket Sports. Thank you to our Patreon podcast champions. And remember, Jerry, talk about some influence here. What do you think, man?
Well, I think, you know what I think? I heard this someplace before, and so I don't know if I'm misquoting somebody here, but your influence is never neutral.
No, it's not. So go out there, make a positive impact, and we'll see you again next week.